The November wind was driving fallen leaves through the deserted streets of Crawfordsville when the phone rang at number 17 Oak Street. A housekeeper had discovered the body. Rachel Parker was lying on the living room floor in a pool of her own blood with her head smashed in. The lights were dimmed and there were 2 glasses of wine on the coffee table, one empty, the other nearly full. Police Lieutenant Earl Baker had called Detective Michael Reed to the scene as soon as it became clear it was a homicide. Michael had just returned to Crawfordsville after 10 years with the Indianapolis Police Department. The small town was his home, and not much had changed over the years, though Michael himself had become a very different person. Victim is Rachel Parker, 44 years old, an English teacher at a local high school, reported the patrolman, who met Michael at the yellow tape of the police fence. Blunt force trauma to the back of the head. Presumably the murder weapon is a marble statue, found here with traces of blood. Michael nodded and pulled on latex gloves. He examined the body before the forensics team carted it away. Rachel was dressed in homemade clothes, dark blue pants and a light-colored blouse. Around her neck was a silver chain with a book-shaped pendant. Her fingernails were neatly trimmed and covered with pale pink nail polish. On her wrist glistened an expensive watch with a thin leather strap, one of the few visible luxuries in her modest attire. "Time of death?" Michael asked the medical examiner, a young woman with tired eyes. "Tentatively between 18 and 20 hours yesterday," she answered, removing her gloves. "I'll be more specific after the autopsy." Michael walked slowly around the living room. The house was neat and tidy, no signs of forced entry or struggle, except where the body lay. This suggested that Rachel most likely knew her killer and had let him in willingly. A stack of checked papers lay on the coffee table. Michael looked at the top sheet, an essay on symbolism in the works of Edgar Allan Poe, written in neat handwriting. The teacher's red notes were precise and few words. In the study, he found personal papers, a laptop, and several photographs. One showed Rachel standing with a group of students, holding an award for winning the district literary contest. Her smile was warm, but her eyes remained serious. "Who found the body?" Michael asked, returning to the living room. "The housekeeper, Louise Coleman, comes in on Wednesdays and Saturdays," the patrolman answered. "She's at the neighbor's right now, in shock, but she's ready to testify." Michael found Louise in the house across the street. She was a full-figured woman in her 50s with kind eyes and heavy hands. "Miss Parker was a good woman," she sobbed, clutching a cup of hot tea. "Always polite, always left me with a list of things to do. I showed up at 9 in the morning as usual, but she wouldn't open the door. I have a key for such occasions. I went in and—" Louise stopped talking, wiping away her tears. "I called the police straight away. I didn't touch anything." "Have you noticed anything unusual lately? Visitors, phone calls, anything that bothered Ms. Parker?" Louise was thinking. She'd started using the phone more, always with it, always texting. And also, she lowered her voice. "About a month ago, I found a men's t-shirt in her bedroom, a teenager's jersey with the logo of the high school basketball team on it." Michael wrote that information down. After talking to Louise, he returned to the house and continued his inspection. In the bedroom, everything was neatly laid out and the bed was made. In the bathroom, expensive grooming products and a light scent of floral perfume. On the bedside table was a book of poetry with a bookmark and a phone. The phone was password protected, but after a quick call to the technicians in the department, Michael gained access. The messages were organized into folders with initials. One was labeled AT, Andre Thomas, Michael assumed after checking school rosters. The messages began with discussions of literary works, but gradually became more and more personal. The last message had been sent the night before. "I'll be in at 8. No one will know. A." Michael closed the phone and put it in the evidence bag. Now he needed to talk to Rachel's coworkers. Crawfordsville Middle School was a typical brick building with worn hallways and pennants of the local Hawks sports team on the walls. Principal Robert Green met Michael in his office. He was a thin man with balding hair and a nervous look in his eyes. "A terrible tragedy, Detective Reed," he said, going through the papers on his desk. "Rachel was one of our best teachers. Students loved her. Co-workers respected her." "How long had she worked at the school?" 8 years. She joined us after her divorce, as I recall. She was a very dedicated teacher. She taught extra classes and a literary club. Did she have any conflicts? Colleagues, students, parents? The principal's a little confused. "You know, there's always something going on at school. But nothing serious, no. Rachel was, professional." But something in his tone made Michael wary. "Mr. Green, this is a murder. Any information could be important." The director sighed. "There was a story about 6 months ago. A student's parents complained that Rachel was paying too much attention to their son, giving him extra assignments, after-school detention. But we figured out it was just a misunderstanding. Rachel was just trying to help a gifted student. Student's name? Andre Thomas." Michael matched the initials on his cell phone. "I need to speak to Ms. Parker's colleagues. And this student." The teacher's lounge was half empty. Only 3 teachers sat there, talking in muffled voices. They were silent when Michael entered. "Detective Reed," he introduced himself, showing his badge. "I'm investigating Rachel Parker's death. I need to ask you a few questions." Mrs. Wilson, the math teacher, shook her head. "I can't believe she's gone. We were still discussing the Christmas concert yesterday." "What was Rachel like?" Michael asked. "Restrained," replied Mr. Foster, the history teacher. "Professional. Not very outgoing, but always willing to help." "Had you noticed any changes in her behavior lately?" The teachers looked at each other. "She's become lively," Mrs. Wilson said carefully. "She smiled more, changed her hair. We thought she had a man. Do you know who?" They shook their heads. "She never talked about her personal life," Foster said. Although, did she? "She's been spending a lot of time with Andre Thomas in recent months. He's in a literary club she ran. Talented guy, but from a dysfunctional family. Rachel said she was trying to help him get into a good college. Anything else out of the ordinary?" Mrs. Wilson frowned. "There was one occasion, a couple weeks ago. I happened to see David Carter, our basketball coach, arguing with Rachel in the hallway. They had been dating for a while, but broke up, I think, over the summer. He looked really upset and she looked stressed. When I approached, they immediately fell silent." Michael wrote down the information. David Carter was next on his list, but he wanted to talk to Andre Thomas first. He found the boy in the library, tall, thin, with attentive eyes and tense shoulders. Seeing the detective, Andre visibly tensed. "Andre Thomas? I'm Detective Michael Reed. I need to talk to you about Miss Parker." They sat down in the far corner of the library. The boy looked at his hands. "Do you know what happened to Miss Parker?" "Yes," Andre answered quietly. "The principal announced this morning. It's terrible." "Did you know Ms. Parker well?" "She was my teacher. She ran the literary club. I want to be a writer, and she helped me. Just as a teacher?" Andre looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Michael pulled out the phone in the evidence bag. "I have reason to believe that there was a relationship between you and Ms. Parker that went beyond the usual teacher-student relationship." "That's not true," Andre said firmly, but his eyes flickered restlessly. "She was just helping me with my studies. Andre, I've seen your messages. I'll be there at 8. No one will know. Did you write that last night?" The boy's face became impenetrable. "I want to talk to my mother. And a lawyer." "You're not a suspect, Andre. I just need to know what happened. Were you at Miss Parker's house last night?" "No." "But you were going to go there?" "I won't talk without my lawyer." Michael sighed. This conversation wasn't going anywhere. "All right, but we'll talk again. I'll get in touch with your mother." As he walked away, he noticed Andre pull out his phone and quickly started typing a message, looking around. Michael decided he needed to find out more before talking to the boy again. and he already had the next person on his list: David Carter, the basketball coach and Rachel's former lover. There was a workout going on in the gym. David Carter, muscular, with a short haircut and a commanding voice, commanded a group of sweaty teenagers running around the court. "Thomas, the defense is weak. Hold your position," he shouted when he spotted Michael. The detective noted that Andre's last name was Thomas, and he was also on the basketball team. That was an interesting coincidence. Carter approached Michael, wiping his face with a towel. "What can I do for you, officer?" "Detective Reed, I'm investigating the murder of Rachel Parker. I was told you two were close." Coach's face twitched. "We dated for a while. We broke up last summer. It was her idea." "How did you take the breakup?" Carter frowned. "Normal. We're adults. It's a shame, of course, but life goes on. Mrs. Wilson saw you arguing with Miss Parker 2 weeks ago. What was it about?" "Nothing much. School business? In the school hallway?" "Look, detective, I don't know where you're going with this, but I had nothing to do with what happened to Rachel. It's a terrible tragedy." "Where were you last night between 6 and 10? "Here at the gym. We had an extra practice before a big game. Ask the guys." He nodded toward the court. "Or the assistant coach, Eric Simmons." Michael made a note to check his alibi. "Do you know Andre Thomas?" Something flashed in Carter's eyes. Irritation? Anger? But it quickly faded. "Of course I do. He's on my team. Not a bad defender when he's focused." "Do you know anything about his relationship with Miss Parker?" "She was his teacher. She helped him with his schoolwork. Andre's a smart kid, but basketball sometimes gets in the way." "That's it?" Carter stared at the detective. "And there must be something else?" Michael did not answer directly. "If you remember anything useful for the investigation, call me." He held out a business card. Back at the station, Michael laid out everything he had on the table: crime scene photos, the medical examiner's report, tapes of conversations. An interesting picture was emerging: a teacher secretly dating a student, a former lover still having feelings, a student's mother who might have found out about the relationship. He needed to talk to Teresa Thomas, Andre's mother, and again to the boy himself, in the presence of a lawyer. But it was already clear. What had begun as a forbidden relationship between teacher and pupil had ended in tragedy, and someone had to answer for it. The morning at the Crawfordsville police station began with a short meeting. Michael laid out the photos and notes on the board regarding the Rachel Parker case. Lieutenant Earl Baker, a heavy-set man of pre-retirement age with a perpetually tired look, sat across from him, sipping a strong cup of coffee. "What have we got, Reed?" he asked, looking at the crime scene photos. "Victim is Rachel Parker, 44, English teacher. Killed by a blow to the back of the head. Murder weapon was a marble statue found at the scene with blood and prints." "Checking the database," Michael replied, pointing to the photos. "There are 2 main suspects: former lover, basketball coach David Carter, and student Andre Thomas, with whom the victim seems to have had a relationship." "The student?" Baker raised his eyebrows. "How old is he?" 17. The lieutenant whistled. "That complicates things. Do you have proof of this relationship?" "Phone messages, the testimony of the housekeeper who found teenage clothes in Parker's bedroom, and the boy's characteristic interview behavior." "All right, dig deeper. Check the victim's background, see if anything pops up. And everyone's motives. If the teacher was having an affair with a minor, it could get some unwanted publicity." After the meeting, Michael went to the archives. He wanted to know more about Rachel Parker's past. After an hour, he discovered that 8 years ago she had moved to Crawfordsville from Chicago after her divorce. Before that, she had taught at a private school in the Chicago suburbs, had good references. There was nothing suspicious or unusual about her background, except for one detail. She changed her last name after the divorce, reverting to her maiden name. Her ex-husband's name was Alan Higgins, and he still lived in Chicago. Michael made a note to check on the ex-husband, although he was unlikely to be connected to the murder after all these years. He then decided to visit Teresa Thomas, Andre's mother. Teresa lived in an old 2-story house on the outskirts of town. The paint on the walls was peeling, but the yard was neatly swept, and there were pots of fall flowers on the porch. She opened the door after the second ring. A petite woman with a tired face and a wary look. "Mrs. Thomas, Detective Michael Reed. I'm investigating Rachel Parker's death, and I'd like to ask you a few questions." She silently led him into the house. It was clean, but poor inside. Worn furniture, an old TV, Andre's school photos and diplomas on the walls. "My son didn't do anything," she said immediately when they sat down in the kitchen. "I know what you're thinking, but Andre couldn't have killed anyone." "Mrs. Thomas, I'm here to ask questions, not to make accusations," Michael replied calmly. "How long has your son known Ms. Parker?" 3 years, since she became his teacher. She's been good to him, helping him with his studies. She's the reason he can get a scholarship to college." There was pride in her voice, mixed with concern. "Did you notice anything unusual about their relationship?" Teresa tensed. "What do you mean? Any indication that their relationship went beyond the usual teacher-student relationship?" "No, of course not." She averted her eyes. Michael pulled a picture of the basketball team jersey they had found in Rachel's bedroom out of the folder. "Does that jersey belong to your son?" Teresa stared at the picture for a long moment. Then her shoulders slumped. "I suspected," she said quietly. "I didn't want to believe it, but a month ago, I found a picture of her on his cell phone. Not a school picture, a private one. And messages. I asked him, and he denied everything, but I could see it in his eyes." "Why didn't you do anything about it?" Teresa grinned bitterly. "What should I have done? Go to the school? Tell them that the teacher seduced my son? Who would believe me? We don't have money for lawyers, and she has a reputation and connections." "But you could have protected your son." "I tried to talk to him. I told him not to see her outside of school, but he—" She shook her head. "He was in love. Said she was the only one who understood him, that they'd be together when he graduated." "Where was Andre the night of the murder?" "At home with me," Teresa answered firmly. "We had dinner together, then watched a movie. He didn't go out. All night? From 6 to 10? She hesitated. "Well, around 8, he said he had to study and went to his room. But I could hear him talking on the phone. And music playing. Did you check to see if he was in the room?" "No, but—" She stopped. "Look, my son is not a killer. Yes, he had, a relationship with this woman. Yes, it was wrong. But he would never hurt her." Michael wrote down the statement. Andre's alibi was weak. His mother couldn't accurately confirm his presence at home at a critical time. "I need to talk to Andre," he said, standing up. "With you and a lawyer, like he asked." "We don't have money for a lawyer," Teresa replied tiredly. "He will be assigned a public defender. I will contact you to arrange a meeting." The next stop was the school. Michael wanted to talk to Principal Robert Green one more time. This time he brought a search warrant for Rachel's school office. The school was in session. The muffled voices of the teachers and the noise of the students came from the classrooms. Michael noticed that there were flowers and notes outside the English classroom, an impromptu memorial for the murdered teacher. The principal was more nervous than usual. "Detective Reed, we're sorry to hear about Rachel, but I don't understand why you need a warrant. We're willing to cooperate." "It's standard procedure, Mr. Green," Michael replied, unfolding the document. "I'll also need access to Rachel's personnel file and the school's security footage." The principal paled visibly. "Minus surveillance footage?" "We don't have any. I mean, we only have cameras at the entrance and in the hallways. And in the offices? No, of course not. That would be an invasion of the teacher's privacy." Michael glared at the principal. "Mr. Green, withholding information during a murder investigation is a serious offense." The principal swallowed and averted his eyes. "I need to check the camera footage in the hallways." "That's going to take time. I'll wait." While the principal made a phone call, Michael decided to look around Rachel's office. A standard classroom with rows of desks, a blackboard, and a teacher's desk. On the walls, posters with quotes from literary works. portraits of writers. On the desk, a neat stack of notebooks, textbooks, and a ceramic mug with the inscription, "To the best teacher." Michael methodically searched every drawer, but found nothing of interest except his personal day planner with notes on meetings and classes. He put the day planner in the evidence bag. At that moment, a young man in a technician's uniform came into the office. "Mr. Green said you wanted the security tapes?" "Yes," Michael replied. "All the cameras in the school for the last month." The technician hesitated. "I need to clarify, what kind of cameras? The official ones or—" Michael became wary. "Which ones?" The technician looked around and lowered his voice. "Well, the ones the principal installed after the vandalism. Unofficially. He said not to mention them." "Where exactly are these cameras installed?" "In several offices, including this one." "There." He pointed to the bookshelf above the teacher's desk, where a small owl stood among the books. "See the owl? There's a camera in its eyes." Michael came closer. Indeed, there were tiny lenses in the ceramic figure's eyes. "Who knew about these cameras?" "Only the director and me. He said it was a temporary measure after someone painted on the walls in a few classrooms, but the school board wouldn't approve it without the teacher's consent, so it was kept secret." "I want all the footage from that camera," Michael said firmly. "Now." An hour later, Michael was sitting in the school's technology room, reviewing the tapes from the camera in Rachel's office for the past 2 weeks. Most of the time, the usual lessons had taken place there, but here, finally, he saw what he was looking for. 2 days ago, after school. Rachel was sitting at her desk, checking papers. David Carter walked into the office, closing the door behind him. There was no sound, but it was clear from their gestures and facial expressions that the conversation was tense. Carter looked angry, pounding his fist on the desk several times. Rachel tried to calm him down at first, but then raised her voice as well. At one point, he grabbed her arm, but she lashed out and pointed to the door. After he left, she sat for a long time with her hands covering her face. On the other tape, Michael saw Andre. It was late evening, classes were long over. He and Rachel were sitting next to each other discussing a book. Their knees were touching, and at one point she put her hand on his shoulder, and then Michael stopped the tape. It wasn't just a friendly gesture. It was an intimate moment between teacher and student. He made copies of the recordings and asked the technician not to tell anyone about them. "Principal Green knows I'm taking these tapes," Michael said, "and he'd better explain why he hid the existence of those cameras." When Michael returned to the principal's office, he found him pacing nervously around the room. "Mr. Green, why did you lie to me about the cameras?" The principal sank into a chair. "I was afraid of a scandal. Those cameras, their installation was not officially approved. After a series of vandalism, I made the decision on my own, for safety. I was going to get permission retroactively, but..." He sighed. "If this gets out, I could be fired. And now you could be charged with obstruction of justice," Michael pointed out. "What do you know about the relationship between Rachel Parker and Andre Thomas?" "Nothing specific," the director answered quickly. "There were rumors, but I couldn't believe that Rachel... She was a professional. And about her relationship with David Carter? They dated for about a year, broke up last summer. It wasn't a secret." "How did Carter take the breakup?" The director hesitated. "Not well. He's a jealous man. There were a couple of incidents where he raised his voice when talking to Rachel. I gave him a warning." "And the recent conflict in her office? Where did you..." The director stopped. "Oh yes, the camera. He came to me afterward, said Rachel was violating professional ethics, hinted at her special relationship with a student, but made no specific accusations." "And you did nothing?" "I talked to Rachel. She denied it. Said Carter was just jealous and trying to hurt her. Without proof, I couldn't do anything." Michael thought for a moment. An interesting picture was emerging. David Carter knew or suspected about the relationship between Rachel and Andre. He had a motive, jealousy, hurt feelings. But did he have an alibi? After talking to the principal, Michael decided to check Carter's alibi. Eric Simmons, the assistant coach, confirmed that on the night of the murder there was indeed a practice in the gym from 7 to 9 p.m., and Carter was present. But between 6 and 7 o'clock and after 9 o'clock, no one saw him. Now it was time to talk to Andre again, but with a lawyer. The meeting was set for the next day at the police station. Andre came with his mother and a young woman lawyer who introduced herself as Sarah White, the public defender. They sat in an interrogation room, gray, featureless, with a large mirror on one of the walls. "Andre," Michael began, "I found additional evidence of your relationship with Ms. Parker. Security footage from the school, your t-shirt at her house, texts. Your mother has already confirmed that she knew about the relationship. What's important to me now is to find out what happened on the day of the murder." The boy cast a glance at the lawyer, who nodded. "Yep," he swallowed. "Yes, we had a relationship. For about 3 months. It started during summer classes. She, understood me like no one else. We planned to be together when I graduated. Were you supposed to meet her the night of the murder?" "Yes," Andre answered quietly. "Around 8 o'clock. Mom thought I was in my room." "Did you go to her?" "No." His eyes filled with tears. "I was going to, but then I changed my mind. We had a fight this afternoon at school. She said we should be careful, that people were getting suspicious. Suggested we stop seeing each other for a while. I got angry, said she was ashamed of me." He shook his head. "I was an idiot. Texted her to say I'd come, but then decided it was better not to go. I wanted her to worry." "So you stayed home?" "Yeah. I swear. I didn't kill her. I loved her." Michael looked at the boy carefully. His grief seemed genuine, but that didn't prove anything. "Teresa," he turned to Andre's mother. "Are you sure you don't know if your son left the house that night?" "Yeah." She looked at her son. "I can't be absolutely sure. The door of his room was closed, music was playing, but I think I would have heard if he had come out. Our house is old. The floorboards creak." "We have no evidence that my client was at the crime scene," the lawyer interjected. "But the victim's ex-lover, Coach Carter, appears to have had a much stronger motive. Jealousy is one of the most common motives for murder." Michael didn't argue. He had 2 main suspects at the moment: Andre Thomas, whose alibi was not reliably confirmed, and David Carter, who had motive and opportunity to commit the murder between 6 and 7 p.m. or after 9. But there was a third possibility: Teresa Thomas herself. A mother who learned of her son's inappropriate relationship with a teacher might well have tried to protect him by eliminating the woman she believed was molesting her child. She had no credible alibi and was clearly capable of desperate acts for her son. As they were leaving, Michael detained Teresa in the hallway. "One more question, Mrs. Thomas. Where were you the night of the murder between 6 and 10? Her eyes widened with surprise and fear. "I was at home with Andre. I've already told you." "All the time? You didn't go out?" "No, of course not." Her voice trembled. "You don't think—" "I'm just checking out all the possibilities," Michael replied calmly. "Thank you for your cooperation." When they left, Michael returned to the board with the photos and notes. He now had 3 suspects, each with a motive, and none with a solid alibi. But at the moment, everything pointed to Teresa Thomas, a mother willing to do anything to protect her son from the woman she believed was ruining his life. The 3rd day of the investigation began for Michael with an unexpected phone call. Forensics expert Gina Foster reported that they found fingerprints on the murder statue that belonged to more than just the victim. "We ran them through the database," Gina said. "A match to David Carter. He's got a 10-year rap sheet for assault in a bar fight." Michael immediately went to the lab. Gina, a dark-haired woman in a white coat, showed him enlarged images of the prints. "Carter's thumb and forefinger prints are clear on the handle of the statuette," she explained. "And something else interesting, She handed Michael a bag with a clear plastic lid, blue fibers found on the carpet next to the body. We matched them to the samples from the victim's house. They don't match. It's polyester, specific shade. A sports jacket? Michael suggested. Very similar. School colors by the looks of it. Michael remembered David Carter's blue coach's jacket with the Hawks logo on it. The evidence pointed to the coach, but more was needed to make an arrest. Back at the station, Michael requested a search warrant for Carter's home and car. The judge signed it without hesitation, given the prints on the murder weapon. At Carter's home, a neat bungalow near the school, Michael and the two officers began a methodical search. The living room is minimalist, with a few sports awards and pictures of basketball teams from different years. The bathroom is immaculately clean. The bedroom is standard furnishings, a neatly made bed. But in the closet behind a stack of towels, Michael found something strange, a shoebox full of photos of Rachel. Some were taken with her knowledge. They smiled together against the background of the lake in a restaurant, but many were clearly taken secretly. Rachel comes out of school, gets in the car, shopping in the supermarket. There were even a few shots from her windows, apparently taken from the street. Underneath the photos was a day planner. Michael opened it and froze. On the pages were detailed notes about Rachel, where she'd been, who she'd met, what time she'd come home, what she'd worn. The entries covered the last 3 months, becoming increasingly chaotic and angry. Stayed after school with him again. 3rd time this week. Thinks I can't see. Smiles at him like she's never smiled at me. Slut. She should be mine. Only mine. I won't let the boy take her. The last entry was dated the day of the murder. It ends today. If not with me, then with no one. Michael put the day planner in the evidence bag. In the garage, they found a blue coach jacket shoved carelessly into a trash can. There was a noticeable dark stain on the sleeve that looked like blood. "Get this to the lab," Michael ordered. "And find Carter, immediately." David wasn't at home or at school. Principal Green said that the coach had taken the day off, saying he wasn't feeling well. His cell phone's been turned off. "Put out a bolo," Michael ordered the dispatcher. Probably armed and dangerous. His garage was missing a hunting knife, which, according to a neighbor, usually hung on the wall. By late afternoon, Gina called from the lab. The stain on the jacket is blood, a match to the victim. The fibers are identical to those found at the crime scene. Michael thanked her and hung up. Now they had their killer, but where was he? The answer came unexpectedly. Carter's assistant, Eric Simmons, had called the station. "David called me an hour ago. He said some strange things, that his life was over, that no one realized how much he loved her. Said he was going to Lake Monroe, the place where he and Rachel had their first date." Lake Monroe was a 40-minute drive from Crawfordsville. Michael and his 2 patrol cars drove out there immediately. The lake was a popular vacation spot in the summer, but in November, the shores were empty. Only the occasional fisherman sat with fishing rods away from the parking lot. They spotted Carter's car at the far end of the parking lot, next to a wooden pier. David himself was sitting on a bench by the water, looking out over the dark surface of the lake. When he saw the police officers approaching, he didn't look surprised. "David Carter," Michael said loudly, his hand on his holster. "You're under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Rachel Parker." "I knew you'd come," Carter replied calmly. "Sooner or later." His hand moved slowly to his jacket pocket. "Hands on your head," Michael shouted, pulling out his gun. "Slowly." Carter froze, then raised his hands. "It's all right, detective. I'm not going to shoot or run. It's getting late." His eyes were empty, as if the life had left them. Michael walked over and carefully pulled a sheathed hunting knife from his pocket. Another officer put handcuffs on Carter. At the station, Carter sat in an interrogation room, indifferent to everything. He refused a lawyer, saying he wanted to just get it over with. "David," Michael began, turning on the tape, "we found your jacket with Rachel's bloodstains on it, your fingerprints on the murder weapon, a diary where you wrote about following her. Now I have to read you your rights." "I know my rights," Carter interrupted. "And I confess. I killed Rachel." His voice was monotone, emotionless. "Tell me what happened. We'd been together for almost a year. She was, special, not like other women, smart, passionate, mysterious. I loved her, really loved her." He paused. "Then she left me. Said we should stay friends, that relationships interfered with work. I tried to understand, give her space. Thought she'd come back." He looked straight into Michael's eyes. "And then I noticed them. The way she looks at that boy, Andre, smiling at him, lingers with him after school. At first I thought it was just caring for a gifted student. But then..." He shook his head. "I'd seen them walking out of school together late at night. The way their hands touched. It was... wrong. You were following her. I should have known." For the first time, there was emotion in his voice. "I couldn't believe she'd trade me for a boy. I mean, he's half her age. What did she see in him?" Michael made no comment. Carter continued. "That night I decided to talk to her. One last time. I got there around 7 before practice. She let me in, we drank wine. I tried to be calm, rational, told her I still loved her, that we could start over. She said..." His voice shook. "She said she loved someone else, that she'd found something with him that she'd never found with me." "Did she say Andre's name?" "No, but I knew. And when I asked her directly, she didn't deny it. Said it was none of my business, that I should leave her alone." His face contorted with anger. "And then she said she was waiting for him, that he'd be here in an hour and I'd better leave before then." Michael wrote down every word. Carter's story matched the evidence. "And you hit her." "I don't remember exactly how it happened. I was furious. I grabbed the first thing I could get my hands on, this stupid statue from her desk. All I remember is the look of surprise in her eyes. And then the blood. So much blood." He closed his eyes. "I didn't realize what I'd done until she fell. I wanted to call an ambulance, but it was too late. She wasn't breathing." "And you went to practice like nothing happened?" "Yeah. I don't know why. I guess I thought if I acted normal, I could pretend like nothing had happened. That it was just a bad dream." Michael finished his interrogation and left the room. David Carter was led away to a cell where he waited to be formally charged. The case was practically closed. There was one more thing left to do: talk to Andre Thomas and his mother. He found them at home. Andre was sitting on the porch, staring blankly into space. Teresa opened the door, saw Michael, and raised her eyebrows questioningly. "We've arrested Rachel Parker's killer," he said. "David Carter." He confessed. Andre looked up. Something flashed in his eyes. Relief? Grief? "Why?" the boy asked. Why had he done it? Jealousy. "He found out about your relationship with Rachel and couldn't bear it. So it was my fault after all." Andre's voice was quiet, but full of pain. "No," Michael said firmly. "It's the fault of a man who chose violence over dealing with his emotions. And it's the fault of a grown woman who engaged in an inappropriate relationship with an underage student." "You don't understand," Andre objected. "We loved each other. It was real." "Maybe," Michael replied softly. "But Rachel was an adult, your teacher. She had responsibilities. And that relationship led to tragedy." "What happens now?" Teresa asked, putting her hand on her son's shoulder. "Carter will be charged with murder. Given the confession and the evidence, it probably won't go to trial. As for the, other aspects, information about the relationship between Rachel and Andre will remain in the police reports. But we won't release it publicly unless it's necessary for the trial." "Thank you," Teresa said quietly. Michael nodded. "Andre, you might want to talk to a counselor. What happened? It's hard." The boy didn't answer, staring blankly into space. A few days later, Michael sat in his home reviewing the final report on the Rachel Parker case. All the evidence fit. The motive was clear. The killer confessed. The case was closed, and yet something was still bugging him. Not about the investigation, but about the people involved. Rachel, an intelligent, educated woman who had chosen a path that would inevitably lead to scandal and career ruin. Andre, who thought he had found true love without realizing all the consequences. David, whose obsession turned love into hate. The story began with a forbidden liaison between a teacher and a student and ended in violence and death. As so often in his work, it came down to the most basic of human emotions: love, jealousy, passion, obsession. Feelings that could both uplift and destroy. Michael closed the file. Tomorrow, it would be filed away, along with thousands of other closed cases. Life in Crawfordsville would slowly return to normal. The school will get a new English teacher. The basketball team will get a new coach. Andre will one day graduate from high school and go off to college, leaving this story in the past. Or maybe not. Such wounds heal slowly. And Michael himself will continue to do his job, investigating new crimes, unraveling new stories of human misconceptions and passions. Because as long as there are people, there will be human weaknesses. And sometimes those weaknesses lead to tragedy.